And as we have become democracies, particularly in the global south, we were fed the message that you need to have rule of law. You need to embrace values. You need to have good governance. But in recent times, we've seen how those who were trying to teach us those laws and those values are the very ones who are violating all those values, who are destroying those very values. And we ask ourselves, what are we expected to do now? Because, yes, we are developing our economies. We are sovereign countries, and we need to be treated as equals. Our sovereignty needs to be respected. We need to sit around the table as equals and having the same share of knowledge, the same share of capability, without any bullying the other, without any.
Henry Foy from the Financial Times. President Ramaphosa, to you. There's reports in your own state media that Donald Trump's administration now does want to take part in the G20. Can you confirm whether they're true or not? And related, you talked about predictable, reliable partners. Do you think that the EU has demonstrated it is now more of a reliable, predictable partner than the US for South Africa and for other G20 nations? And to the two EU presidents, related to that, you've talked about how Trump's presidency and the tariff war has made the EU look for new friends, that it wasn't working close with in the past. Has the way Trump has dealt with the G20, and particularly South Africa, helped make deals like today happen, which, as you said, have come together in the last 8 months only? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Well, thank you very much. We Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Thank you, Minister Pakstow, Program Director, B20 co-chairs, Ms. Nonkululeko Nyembezi and Mr. Mpolisi Gojo, B20 South African Sherpa, Mr. Kes Kovadia, Minister of International Relations, and Minister of Finance, Minister of Trade, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation is called Ronald Lamola, and the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwane, AU and EU commissioners, members of the local Business Advisory Council, members of the International Business Advocacy Council, and members of the International Business Advocacy Caucus, ambassadors and high commissioners here present, and B20 Sherpas and delegates, and distinguished guests and friends. It's a real joy to be amongst you here. I've made it a bit of a habit these days that as I walk into meetings, I want to read the audience and test the temperature of the audience. And as I walk in, particularly when I have to be amongst business people, as I enter, I immediately have a sense that there is a wonderful smell of money. But then that is often accompanied by another element, which is, as I've just come back from this few minutes ago with Minister Lamola and Godongwane, we've just come back from the B20 or G20 Social Summit. Now, as I walked in, there was a big round of applause. And people were like saying, President, 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 with great love and affection. So as I walked in here, there was silence. Absolute silence. No. Rather than see it as a negative, I told myself that, gee, I'm at the right place here. Because, as I say, I read my audience, and as you didn't applaud, I was taking my steps, walking alongside some of your colleagues, looking at their faces, seeing how they are responding to this moment. But as I got to the front, you applauded, which told me that there is real weighty money here. It is indeed a great honor to address you all, to address a gathering of business people from across the globe who, by your presence here, have affirmed your commitment to and support for our G20 process, but also indirectly to support a better Africa and a better world. This G20, as you well know, is meeting for the very first time on African soil, and we as South Africa are truly honored and privileged to be the first country on the continent to be hosting the G20. From every corner of the earth, people are returning to this place, the cradle of humanity, to reflect on the state of our world and to chart a way forward to a more inclusive and a more prosperous and more sustainable future, which through your presence, I'd like to believe you have been doing, returning to where we all originated, and to come and draw from the wisdom that resides in this continent. This is a moment of great significance for our continent. It is also a moment of great opportunity, I'd like to believe. It is an opportunity for Africa to assert itself and to assert its place in global affairs. When we accepted the presidency of the G20, we immediately said that we are going to focus on Africa and get the world to start looking at Africa and its great potential. To affirm its position as a leader of economic growth and social progress, it is in this continent that we believe a great focus should be. Africa has some of the fastest growing economies in the world. It has the youngest population, and it is endowed with abundant resources, natural resources and human capital. It is also endowed with critical minerals that will build the economy of the future, and with the fertile lands that can feed the world, as well as having the sun and the wind that will power revolution in energy. The African Continental Free Trade Area provides an unprecedented opportunity to harness these resources for the good of the people of the continent. It promises a new era of trade, of investment across the borders that had so far been held back. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area promises greater alignment of rules, of regulations, of standards, as well as of laws. It promises the seamless movement of goods and the provision of services across a market of 1.4 billion people. As the work done by the B20 has made clear, Africa has the potential to be the next frontier of global production, commerce, as well as innovation. And we will call on the global community to embrace Africa's rise. Some years ago, the front page of The Economist magazine depicted Africa as a continent that is lost, that is backwards, but Africa is on the rise. It is Africa that seeks to be more prosperous, and by being prosperous, we'd like to believe that we therefore will have a more prosperous world. An Africa that is at peace, that is stable, that is well-governed, and that has the means to meet the needs of its people, makes for a better world. If the G20 is to realize its mission of fostering a more stable and prosperous world, a mission which was its original mission, then Africa's growth and development must be made a priority. This calls for investment in infrastructure and industry. It calls for investment in the people of this continent, especially the young people. It calls for technology to be spread around. It calls for a massive increase in finance for climate action and a just transition for African economies. Now, Africa's growth and development calls for a more deliberate and more decisive action towards debt sustainability on the African continent. Many African countries are unable to invest in their people. They are unable to invest in infrastructure or in productive activity because of the cost of servicing their debt. Removing their burden of debt will unleash the potential of many African economies and the contribution that they can make to global growth. This task has been bolstered in recent days by the release of the report of the Africa Expert Panel that was chaired, or that is chaired by former South African Finance Minister Trevor Manuel, whom we asked to corral a number of experts, both on our continent and outside of our continent. The panel's report highlights the high cost of capital that is faced by African countries, which are higher than in other regions with similar fundamentals. It recommends measures to mobilize significantly more concessional funding from multilateral development banks and African trade and finance institutions. The report says that we need to address biased risk perceptions of Africa by mandating greater transparency and accountability from credit rating organizations or agencies. Taken together, the detailed recommendation of the expert panel could create the conditions for an investment boom on our continent. Through its deliberations over the past year, the B20 has done much to reinforce the value of Africa's rise. And it has outlined in detail the actions that need to be taken, as well as the conditions that need to be met to realize the rise of the continent that I'm talking about. The B20 has done much to position business as a force for progress. The B20 could not have been clearer. The global business community is prepared, is willing, and able to drive inclusive growth, sustainable growth, and resilient growth as well. The global business community has made itself a reliable partner, keen to work with governments, with multilateral bodies, with social partners, and with communities in pursuit of the common good. Now, I say this advisedly, as we here in South Africa have developed a culture and a good practice of working together with business, where we build a partnership, or we have built a partnership that is somewhat institutionalized and where we work together. And I must say that we have found business to be very supportive, to be keen, to help us address the challenges that our country faces. But in the course of that, we've also, as a government, been able to build partnerships with labor, with civil society, and we found this to be really, really effectual. B20 has made it clear that growth must be inclusive. And we've been pleased that here in South Africa, our business compatriots have also made growth inclusiveness to be their goal and priority. Those who have been marginalized, women, youth, persons with disabilities, and the unemployed, must become active and must become beneficial participants in the economy, whether at national level and also whether at global level. This is a matter of social and economic justice, but it is much more than that. It is an opportunity to harness the capabilities, the talents, and the effort of billions of people to unleash the productive potential of humanity. This calls for an approach that invests in people. It must start in the earliest of years of life, establishing through quality foundational education a platform for learning that produces the skills that the economy of tomorrow will need. It calls for accessible, quality healthcare, for affordable social security and focused poverty alleviation measures. And it calls for support for micro, social, and medium enterprises, for entrepreneurs, and for informal businesses to be given an opportunity to grow and to thrive. Workers need to be skilled and reskilled, as well as upskilled, as methods of production change, as new industries emerge, as old industries decline, and as technology advances at an ever-increasing rate. The B20 has said that growth must be sustainable. For the last 2 centuries, the extraordinary growth of global economy has been achieved at the expense of the very resources on which our species relies for survival. We now know that unless we change course, urgently for that matter, as well as resolutely, the conditions of life on this planet will become intolerable. The move to a low-carbon economy cannot be delayed. Indeed, it must be accelerated. As we undertake this transition, we must be sure not to further deepen inequality between and within countries. We cannot disadvantage those countries that bear the least responsibility for climate change, yet are today most vulnerable to its effects. We therefore need a massive increase in financial support for just and inclusive transitions in developing economies. We must share knowledge and expertise as well as technology to address the challenges that those countries will face. At the same time, we must be wary of unilateral trade measures that seek to promote cleaner energy, but that further restrict fair market access for economies that are still developing and growing. We need to pursue fair, transparent, multilateral trade agreements that do not punish countries for a climate crisis that they did not create. Now, from the experience of recent years, we are clear that growth must be resilient, and that is clear. We have seen the huge disruptions to productions and trade that can be caused by global pandemics, by wars, by conflicts, by geopolitical turbulence, and also by unilateral decisions that are taken that impact on trade. At such times, we appreciate the value of multilateral institutions and a rules-based world order. And as we have become democracies, particularly in the global south, we were fed the message that you need to have rule of law. You need to embrace values. You need to have good governance. But in recent times, we've seen how those who were trying to teach us those laws and those values are the very ones who are violating all those values, who are destroying those very values. And we ask ourselves, what are we expected to do now? Because, yes, we are developing our economies. We are sovereign countries, and we need to be treated as equals. Our sovereignty needs to be respected. We need to sit around the table as equals and having the same share of knowledge, the same share of capability, without any bullying the other, without any. For in the past, for most of us in the global south, we were colonized. We were not even allowed a moment around at the table. We were not even allowed to be in the room. And we've now been arguing that we would like to be in the room. And we appreciate the importance of diverse and resilient supply chains, regulatory coherence, and predictable trade relations. As we work to reinforce the resilience of our economies and the resilience of the global economy, we must direct greater effort towards multilateralism and strengthen the multilateral system, but also, in doing so, to reduce the inequality that manifests itself in many ways. A more equal world in which political and economic power is more fairly distributed, in which all people have an equal voice and an equal stake. Such a world is more stable and more resilient. And that is the world that many of us want to live in. The G20 Global Inequality Report that was produced by Nobel laureate Professor Joseph Stiglitz and his committee of independent experts that I appointed provides valuable guidance on the actions we can take towards such a world. The recommendations contained in the committee's report reinforce many of the priorities and actions that have been put forward at the B20 summit, and indeed throughout the year's B20 engagements. South Africa embarked on its G20 presidency determined to advance the principles of equality, of solidarity, and sustainability. Now, over the course of the past year, most of the countries of the G20 have rallied in support of these principles, understanding that they are fundamental to our shared future as humanity. We commend and applaud and thank the B20 for having imbued these principles with meaning and relevance. And I congratulate the B20 team and everyone from across the globe who participated in this worthy effort and who are now determined to be part of the important work that lies ahead in building a better future. As I said, I've just come back from the G20 Social Summit, attended by some 5,000 people. This was a process that was started by President Lula da Silva, President of Brazil, as Brazil was the president of the G20 last year. We decided that we would like to take it forward. And taking it forward has been one of the most worthwhile decisions we have taken, because we realized that out there were a number of communities, a number of partners that we should have who are hungry to put their views forward. And they participated through 230 meetings, surpassing what the G20 meetings have been about. G20 has been, with the Sherpas and all that, have been 130. They engaged in 230 meetings. And who are they? They are the B women, the G women rather, G20 women. They are the G20 youth. They are the G20 disabled people. They are the G20 people of the LGBTIQ. And sometimes they call themselves queers. They say we are the G20 queers. And they are people. They are people. There's the sport element and the labor element and. And we counted more than like 22 formations that have become part of the G20 family. Now, elsewhere in the world, we have been branded as South Africa as having convened the G100. And my retort is, no, we didn't convene the G100. We have convened the G million, if you like, the G20 million. Because if we are to create a world that is prosperous, a world that is caring, a world that is more equal, a world that is underpinned by solidarity, we do believe that it's important to involve the people who are going to be affected by the decisions that the Leaders' Summit is going to take the day after tomorrow. And they have been so forward that they gave me their own declaration. They collectively, 5,000 people, much more than you are and much more than I'm going to have in 2 days' time, just 20. They are 5,000. They were able to reach a declaration. But I congratulate you too, because you have your own declaration. So we are very pleased with the participation that we have seen. It's been rich, it's been deep, it's been meaningful, and I'd like to thank you all as the B20 for having honored South Africa. Your participation, I believe 45% of the people participating here are from other lands or other countries. With the Social Summit, there were 20% participants from other countries. So you are much better than what the Social Summit produced. But thank you so much. For me, this is a real honor. And I will not talk about what smell I am now sensing here, because I smell consensus. I smell real agreement on the issues that you set out to do. Thank you very much.
Henry Foy from the Financial Times. President Ramaphosa, to you. There's reports in your own state media that Donald Trump's administration now does want to take part in the G20. Can you confirm whether they're true or not? And related, you talked about predictable, reliable partners. Do you think that the EU has demonstrated it is now more of a reliable, predictable partner than the US for South Africa and for other G20 nations. And to the two EU presidents, related to that, you've talked about how Trump's presidency and the tariff war has made the EU look for new friends, that it wasn't working close with in the past. Has the way Trump has dealt with the G20, and particularly South Africa, helped make deals like today happen, which, as you said, have come together in the last 8 months only? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Well, thank you very much. We have received notice from the United States, a notice which we are still in discussions with them over, about a change of mind about participating in one shape, form, or other in the summit. So the discussions are still ongoing. This comes really at the late hour before the summit begins. And so therefore we do need to engage in those types of discussions to see how practical it is and what it finally really means. In a way, we see this as a positive sign, very positive, because, as I've often said, boycott politics never work. It's always best to be inside the tent than being outside of the tent. The tent is the G20. All countries are here, and the United States, being the biggest economy in the world, needs to be here. So it's pleasing to hear that there is a change of approach, and so we are still discussing how that will manifest. On the issue of relationships, we as South Africa focus on the bilateral relationships that we have with various partners in the world, and we are not in the business of comparing one relationship against another. We deal with our relationships on a bilateral basis, and the multilateral side of relations happens either at regional bodies, continental bodies, or global bodies, which is at the multilateral level. So it's not for me to even say this relationship is better than the other one. What I can tell you, as I said earlier, is that Europe, the EU, has been our partner for years. The relationship has matured. It's reliable, it's predictable, and it's based on trust. And we've used this relationship to resolve many problems that may have been regarded as intractable. And so both of us have a deep commitment to making our relationship work on an ongoing basis, despite challenges or problems that may come our way. So far, it's been smooth sailing, a relationship between South Africa and the European Union. Thank you.